In this video, we're going to look at the color slice tools. We'll keep it basic for now and focus on the main functions. These are a powerful set of secondary tools that allow us to quickly work on pre-qualified ranges of hue, so red, yellow, green, etc., and change the hue and saturation of the qualified pixels. Now, this is not dissimilar to the 6-vector color targets we have on the hue attribute curves. For example, this red dot here means I can choose red and very quickly work on the red hues. But this raises a question. Why do we need another tool that does this? Don't the attribute curves already enable us to make quick adjustments to the reds or the yellows or anything else? Well, the answer is that the color slice uses a different method when working with saturation compared to the other tools that we've seen so far. The color slice works subtractively rather than additively. What does that mean? We'll take a look and find out. We've got some new practice footage here, and we'll go back to the previous stuff soon enough, but these shots will give you a better opportunity to practice with the color slice tools. I'd like to point out that these shots are ideal for the color slice. I find that it excels with brightly colored materials, such as fabric, plastics, metals, and what have you, so it gets plenty of use. We've got a simple challenge here. The hat, the jacket, and the skin tones need work. The client wants very strong, cartoony colors and nice, rich skin tones on the talent. So, let's start by taking the brief literally, starting with the hat. Now, I've already made a qualification on the hat here, and let's see what happens if we crank up the global saturation on the primaries window. I'm going to make sure I've got highlight on, and I want you to take a close look at the parade scopes in the lower right of the screen. As I drag my saturation up, see that the red wave keeps climbing higher and higher. This is an additive operation. We're increasing saturation by boosting the relevant color channels, and this makes our colors brighter as well as more saturated. And it looks wrong. It's too bright and it does not fit into the image. Now, I could try some convoluted stuff with the other primary tools here, and this is how I originally graded this project way back then. I could bring the highlights down, the mids down, the shadows down, preserve a bit more contrast within this region, and then dial the saturation back in. And then I might go into the secondary curves and try and bring a bit more saturation into these silvery highlights here and make the red a bit more of a flatter color. But let's not do that. Let's see what the color slice can do for us. Now I'm going to get rid of this secondary. In fact, I'm going to go onto an entirely different node, and I'm just going to deactivate the previous one. The color slice comes with its qualifications built in, and we have a limited capacity to refine them. We're going to look at the reds using the color slice, so first I want to check that qualification. Now I do this by clicking on any tool in the corresponding window, in this case the red window, and then activating highlight mode, and it will show me the key built in to the color slice, or the relevant part of the hue range down here. Now, this isn't great. It's got gaps, it hits a lot of stuff I don't want to work with, but we will get a usable qualification out of this. The only real option to refine this is the center bar, just below the vector scope icon down here. You'll notice that each of these circles has a highlighted section, like a pizza slice, and this shows us the hues that the corresponding tool will impact. There's also a white line, like a clock hand, and this is the center point of the qualification. Clicking and dragging the center bar will move this white line around. And you can see the impact this has on our qualification. In this case, dragging it all the way to the right will give us something that we can use. Now, we want to see what we can do with the saturation slider down below, the one with the raindrop icon. We can click and drag the icon left or right, we can click and drag up or down within the bar here, or we can double click on the number below and type something in. So, let's raise the saturation and see what happens. Look at our red wave on the parade. It's barely moving, but the green and the blue channels are falling. This is a subtractive operation. It does not increase the relevant channels to increase saturation. Instead, it decreases the other channels. So let's take a look at what effect this has on brightness. Let's go over to the waveform and let's increase the saturation. Contrary to the previous additive operation where increasing saturation made something brighter, in this case, it looks like increasing the saturation makes something darker. And decreasing the saturation will also make it brighter. Just something to be aware of when you're using this tool. Now, this immediately gives us a much better result. I'm just going to drag up, and in fact I'm going to take a look at this in the context of the actual image, and I can very quickly get a nice rich red hat that looks good and doesn't jar out of the rest of the image, especially once we do some work on the yellow jacket down here. So I might just wrangle this a little bit more, and I'm pretty happy with that. So the next task is the yellow jacket. So I've got another node for that. First, let's check the key on the yellow jacket. Let's make sure that it's the active window, and then activate highlight mode, and oh dear. Yellow and green are difficult. They're quite common in nature, and they have a lot of overlap. We can't use this key, and in fact, we won't be able to use anything that the yellow window does down here. If I drag it one way, I get the foliage. If I drag it the other way, I get the skin tones. And I just want to work on this jacket, so using the 6-vector kind of selection down here is not going to work. We're going to pull a traditional hue sat luma key for the jacket, which will be very easy. So I will just quickly do that. Okay, and that was easy enough. So now let's go back to the 6-vector. And if I hit the highlight mode, I'm still seeing the key for the yellow color slice down here. Now this gets a little bit confusing switching between different keys. We're going to use the global controls here, which will respect the HueSat Luma key we've just pulled. To get rid of this display, I'm just going to hit the reset button. And now with none of these tools active, with them all at their default values, I'm not going to see any of those pre-made keys. I'm just going to see the key that I made with the HSL key. And we're going to use the global controls at the top of the window here. So now I know that I'm working within the correct qualification. I will just turn that off. So now, if I work with these global controls, you can see that I'm working within the HSL key that we've made. So I don't need to rely on these pre-made qualifications down here. And this will also respect the power windows as well. So we can make some very accurate qualifications and then make subtractive saturation adjustments within them. I'm just going to give the coat a bit of a boost. Keep going until it looks good. Not too much, but a little bit, and that's good. And it's also kind of filled out some of the silvery highlights on the left-hand side as well. So that was also very easy. I didn't have to faff around with any of the primaries down here. We fixed the jacket. Finally, we have the skin tones. We're going to look at the density slider here, and I found that it's quite good for darker skin tones. So what we'll do is we'll go and check our key because it might save us some time. I'm going to look at skin down here. Now, let's see what I can do. It looks like I'm either going to get the hat or the jacket, and I'm always going to get the basketball hoop, so I don't think we'll use the skin tools. We're going to have to pull another HSL key. That's okay, we're colorists, we are used to it by now. So give me a second whilst I do this. Okay, that's a decent key. I'm going to need to garbage map the hoop at the top, so I will do that very quickly. Go to the tracker and just do a track there and make sure it's a negative shape. And there we go. So I've got a pretty decent stable skin key here. I've got a little bit on the hat. I'm not too bothered about that. Maybe if this were for real, I'd go in and I'd maybe just track that out. That'd be quite easy on this shot. But for now, that's okay. Now, I think I also want to mat this guy out on the left. He's going to need a bit of a different operation on his skin because his skin tones are very different. So I'll add another curve. I will track him out as well, because his lips will go funny if we work on the color slice there. And we will just make sure that that's also punching a hole in the mat. There we go. We've got our two kind of main leads in here, qualified. So let's see what we can do with our skin tones. Now, we'll take a look at density, as it can be quite helpful when working on skin under certain conditions. Density reduces the brightness of the most saturated pixels in our image. So if I drag it up, it brings the more colorful parts of the skin down, and you'll notice that it leaves our kind of neutral highlights alone, which makes it quite a powerful tool. Now, if I drag density to the right, the saturated pixels get darker, and if I drag density to the left, the saturated pixels get lighter. So I'm going to drag density to the right until I like the look of the skin, and I don't want to be too heavy-handed here. I